Hey everyone, it has been a while since we last spoke, but we are fast approaching what I believe is unquestionably the most fun part of the NFL offseason, and that is the NFL Draft, which is followed shortly thereafter by the schedule release. So hopefully those two events give you your football fix, if you will, for the spring. Maybe you even start planning some trips for later in the year, because hopefully by the time fall rolls around, full capacity stadiums will be a thing. Keep our fingers crossed for that. But let's rewind it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind it actually a little bit to the beginning of the league year, which was in March, and that's when free agency opened for all 32 teams across the league. I don't think a lot of Bills fans expected the team to be super splashy in free agency. The salary cap is a little bit lower this year, and the Bills were kind of up against it, so I think a lot of fans would have been content just keeping the majority of a 13-3 AFC championship team together. And much to Brandon Beane's credit, that's essentially what they did. Let's start with the number one free agent. That was Matt Milano. I know a lot of Bills fans wanted to keep him. They were starting to come to this realization that, hey, maybe we can't. We might have to watch him in another jersey next year. Just, again, fingers crossed that it's not New England, right? I think that's what we were all thinking, as we just assumed that Bill Belichick would be interested, and he went on a spending spree in his own right. He ends up taking the top two tight ends. Let's not get ahead of the positions here. I'll talk about tight ends shortly. Milano, integral part of what the Bills do on defense, obviously. Covers the tight end. He covers the running back out of the backfield. He's very instinctive, a great tackler, can rush the passer and force fumbles. He's important to what they do. I'm very excited he's back in the fold. I think he maybe could have got even more money on the open market, but he, feeds us this unfinished business line and gives us that tweet from Wolf of Wall Street, and all the fans are excited. I think the Bills are just equally as excited to have him back, so very glad to see it. On offense, one sacrificial lamb, and that is John Brown. Bless up. Pour one out for my man John Brown. John Brown was one of my favorite players in the league before he joined the Bills. Became one of, if not my very favorite Buffalo Bill when he joined them a couple of years back. And I will continue to root for him. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get up. I'm going to pick it up. We're going to get up for the first time, maybe ever. Check out what I spent my money on this offseason right there, huh? 13, 14, 15. Love it. That's my little wall of fame right there. They're all signed. Framed, Madden framed, looking good, right? I mean, right? That's what I spent my money on this offseason. Quick story about the John Brown one. I hung it, and he got cut the very next day. The next day. Such is life. But anyway, exit John Brown, enter Emmanuel Sanders. Are you losing a little bit of speed? Without question. I don't think that's even debatable. John Brown, a bit more of a north and south runner. I think he's shown that he could be a pretty good. He had his route tree wasn't limited to north and south, but Emmanuel Sanders, I think, is a bit of an upgrade in terms of route running. And the Bills, having run a lot of four wide receiver sets towards the end of last year because Gabe Davis was so good, they wanted to get him on the field. I think that maybe the Bills are looking at it like, and this is obviously interchangeable, but like Diggs and Davis on the outside, Beasley and Sanders in the slot, Dawson Knox, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, etc. I think they can create mismatches all over the field. And, Brian Dable doesn't end up getting a head coaching job, so he's back. Everyone's back. Like, everything is back. They, make one change at receiver, but the offensive line is back as well. Darrell Williams re-signs, John Feliciano re-signs, and then they just kind of fill in some pieces. They, like I said, over the past couple of years, they have not screwed around with the depth at all over the past couple of years. They want to make sure that they have guys that can play if they're called upon. They get Bobby Hart from Cincinnati. They added Jamil Douglas, I believe, from Tennessee. That's on offense. On defense, they added Tyrell Adams, a linebacker from Houston, F.A. Obata from Shocker, Carolina. And none of these players scream to me like, oh, that we're good here now. We don't need to address this in the draft. I don't think there's a single position outside of quarterback, of course, where fans would be surprised if the Bills went there, even in the first round. I know that there's fans that want the running back. There's fans that want, the edge rusher. There's fans that want a corner. There's fans that want a tight end in Kyle Pitts. Oh, I didn't touch on the tight end. Jacob Hollister, another piece they threw in there. Josh knows him from Wyoming. Bill Belichick on his little spending spree takes up Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, which is a lot of Bills fans maybe number one target if they thought they're going to lose Milano. Like, let's spend the money on this player because that is the only thing that's really lacking in our offense. And I understand that. Belichick takes them both. I'm not sure Cam Newton is going to have some huge comeback season at his age after watching what I watched last year, so it doesn't really scare me all that much, I suppose. But I don't want to go on a New England tirade here. But I think most fans are pretty happy with keeping Matt Milano. If it comes to the expense of signing Jonnu Smith, who's been one of my favorite tight ends in the league, just an athletic freak. It sucks that he went to New England, but we didn't have him last year and went 13-3. I think the tight end is a position that can be upgraded, and as I kind of talk about the draft here, let's just cross. Can we cross this idea off the list? The Kyle Pitts idea. Okay, some fans are like, just trade everything for Kyle Pitts. Throw it all in there and just trade everything for Kyle Pitts. Our roster is deep. We can do this. I guess I would love to get Kyle Pitts. Don't get me wrong, but hey, we're not the only organization that knows of Kyle Pitts. I think Buffalo sports fans, maybe just Buffalo sports fans on Twitter, there's certainly a difference. What's a good comparison? Okay. Connor McDavid. And if you don't watch hockey, I apologize, but I think some Buffalo sports fans will understand this. We acted like we were the only team or the only organization, community, everything that knew of Connor McDavid. There was this whole tank thing. I was like, we're going to tank for McDavid. And at worst, we get Eichel. But nobody really ever thought about getting Jack Eichel. It was like, well, when we get McDavid, things will be better. They didn't get McDavid. Things haven't got better. But that's another story for another day. I digress. I just can't get on board with this madden thought process that the Bills can trade up. The Bills can get from 30 to 4. Atlanta might want him at 4 if they're going to stay committed to Matt Ryan. They have a new coach in Arthur Smith. He just had Jonnu Smith last year in Tennessee. Maybe he wants Kyle Pitts for his offense. Wouldn't you? He could go as high as 4. I guess it's possible he could start sliding into 8 or so. But and then maybe the Bills are calling, but I just think the cost is going to be too much. And I would love to have Kyle Pitts, of course. Who wouldn't? Any team would. I just don't think it's realistic, guys. All right? I'm putting that idea to bed right now. I mean, the most realistic idea at tight end might be Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. I think he's the only other tight end worthy of taking maybe even in the first 2 rounds. But to me, he kind of screams Dawson Knox. He's almost the exact same size as Dawson Knox. He's a decent blocker, a little bit inconsistent with his hands in the passing game and getting off of tight ends and coverage. You kind of already have that. So let's spend the pick elsewhere. I think tight end would surprise me at 30. Tight end would surprise me. Quarterback would floor me, absolutely blow me away, rolling over the couch, shocked. Okay? But anywhere else, other than special teams, I could see the Bills going. I'm going to talk about a couple of the prospects, a couple of the favorites. Let's start with the running back idea. I'm not huge on it. I like Najee Harris. Never saw Najee Harris get tackled. I don't think he's ever been tackled or hit or anything like that. Every time he got the ball, he got 12 yards. He got a first down. And he scored a bajillion touchdowns and he ran for a bajillion yards. Convinced me otherwise. I feel like every Alabama game I watch, it's he just doesn't get hit. And obviously that would change at the NFL level, but I'm being a little bit sarcastic and dramatic here just for the sake of the video. But I just don't think, how do I want to say this? I think you could get value later in the draft at running back. Maybe in the fifth. The Bills don't have a 4th round pick, so they have 2 fifths. So maybe in the 5th, or even the 3rd again, if you want to go Singletary Moss running back again in the 3rd. Maybe in the 3rd with a Kenny Gainwell out of Memphis. And are you losing as much? From Etienne and Harris to Gainwell, they're better players probably, but like I just feel like the value is just in terms of value, like what are you really losing from first to third round running back? It's still a running back. You want to throw the ball as much as possible. I think you're losing a lot more going from like a first round edge rusher or corner to like a fourth or fifth round edge rusher or corner. You want somebody who's a little bit more polished, somebody that can play right away. And I'm going to go into that. I'm just going to put that running back idea in my mock draft, I suppose, or my draft board to bed. I just don't want to go that route. But edge rusher is fun for me because the Bills have to start planning for the departure of Jerry Hughes. He's not going to be here forever. Like him. It's just age will catch up with him at some point. Obviously, you'd like to see AJ Epinesa take a nice stride in his second year. I don't know how the draft will play out, obviously, but just to go over some of these guys, I don't think Jalen Phillips is really going to be an option. I just don't think the Bills would be super interested in him. I believe wasn't he injured? As I'm looking at it right now, and I apologize. Yeah, he had ankle, wrist injuries, concussions. The Bills seem to be huge on the availability part of the thing, and Jalen Phillips just screams like missed games to that. Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, unpolished, right? Some plays the guy just looks. You don't want to hear the words Aaron Maben if you're drafting a defensive end, and that's just kind of how it feels to me. I could be wrong about that, but I'm just I don't know. You don't see it enough, and you don't see that. He just sometimes is just sticks to blocks, and is just unimpressive. Greg Rousseau is another popular name out of Miami. Outstanding. Was it sophomore year? I can't keep track of the red shirts and everything, guys. I'm sorry. Outstanding second year with Miami, 15 and a half sacks or something. Was only behind Chase Young, and then sat out last year. So he hasn't played football in a year. And this is true of a couple other guys, like Joe Tryon out of Washington. He might be my favorite. Physical freak, plays a lot, but just sat out last year. It's just that's going to throw such a wrench into the planning, because this is unprecedented. I don't blame these players for sitting out. Okay, I mean, guys have been sitting out. Ed Oliver sat out the end of his junior season at Houston. Bill still ended up drafting him 9 overall. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that they're going to look at because of the unique, very, very unique circumstances with COVID and everything. But you worry a little bit, right? Guy hasn't played football in over a year. Is he stopping his development? I kind of hate the word development, really, but he really could come into his own like a Rousseau or Tryon, just really take his game to the next level by playing a season, and they both didn't do it. But I do think that the Bills will look at them as options for sure. Cornerback, I want to talk about a little bit. I don't think the Bills are necessarily high enough to get their hands on a Patrick Surtain or a J.C. Horn. They might be more in the Tyson Campbell, Greg Newsome range. Some people like the kid out of Syracuse, Melifonwu. I'm open to any of those, to be honest with you. Give me a talented corner to play opposite of Trey White that isn't going to miss games, that is somebody that I can rely upon, that maybe you play 4 years, you take the 5th year option because you have him, the first round pick. So he plays for 5 years. Trey's contract is approaching its last year, and if he's still playing at a very high level, maybe you keep him on board. Otherwise, you kind of just make the transition, right? Trey White goes out, and then Newsome or Campbell or Melifonwu or whoever, as long as they're a very good player, they will get the extension next. That's just how the NFL works. I think that is a realistic way of looking at it. I guess I could see the Bills going Elijah Vera-Tucker from USC. If he starts to fall down the draft board a little bit, down to through the first round, he could, I could see a situation where he is the highest ranked player on the Bills draft board. And they're like, well, we can't pass this up right here. And they could plug and play him at guard. Maybe he's got a future at tackle. But we know that there is a hole at guard. I didn't even bring up Forrest Lamp. Did I bring up Forrest Lamp? Like, Forrest Lamp is another free agent signing for the Bills. He could come in and play guard for them right away. So, there's a hole there. Like, that hole that Butker and Winters kind of leave, and Brian Winters left. Like, that was just the one revolving door on the Bills' offensive line all year long. So, like, I could see a situation where Vera-Tucker is staring them in the face, and they're like, we can't even really pass this up. Another thing, receiver. I don't think that just because they have 4 really good receivers doesn't mean they won't take one. They're obviously not going to get into the Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, sweepstakes there. But at 30, they could be looking at, like, Kadarius Toney out of Florida. I love Terrace Marshall from LSU. LSU has some fantastic wide receiver prospects over the past however many years. I mean, you had Odell and Jarvis Landry, Justin Jefferson, now Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall. They have Kayshon Boutte, who is still in college, and I think he's going to be a fantastic pro as well. They've been really good with receivers lately. You could look at Terrace Marshall or Kadarius Toney. Rondale Moore has been like kind of the workout warrior. There was no combine, but he would have been that combine guy whose workout just impressed everyone. He's a little bit shorter. I believe he's only like 5'7", 181. So people worry about that. Definitely worry about size a little bit, but he weighs more than Devontae Smith does. Something about players under 170 pounds or something like that. Wide receivers under 170 pounds, and Smith is like, I have it actually right here. Let me just click on him and see what he is exactly like. Desean Jackson is really the only one under that weight that has ever really been successful at wide receiver. What did he officially go at? He's 170, so like 170 or less. He's skinny as a rail, but he gets a crazy separation. I mean, you watch the national championship game, the guy was he was open on every play. He just runs past cornerbacks. Hopefully that translates to the next level. I think he's going to be a good pro, but if I had to take a receiver first, I would be going Jamar Chase. That's just me. Even though he sat out last year, the guy was just a stud with Burrow. Maybe they'll reconnect him. Maybe the Bengals will reconnect him. Looking down the receiver list even a little bit more, Clemson has some really nice guys too. Amari Rodgers, to me, spitting image of Deebo Samuel for San Francisco. So I think that could be an option for the Bills as well. Maybe that might be a little bit later in the draft. I'm going to click him right now, see where they have him projected. I know that he's more of a day 2 type of pick. They have him round 3. Sure. I could see that happening. Cornell Powell is another one. The guy looks like he was chiseled out of granite. Doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. Also from Clemson. I've seen him all up and down mock drafts. He has a current projection of rounds 3 and 4. I've seen him as low as like 6 in mock drafts. I don't, there's different things that teams learn about that lead to these guys, rising and falling. And it's probably a little bit tougher this year with, they've been kind of away because of this like distance, the no combine, the interviews, the draft visits and everything like that. But that's pretty much where I am with the draft. I like anywhere. Like I gave you a couple of my favorite names. I'd love to hear a couple of your guys' favorite names. Please talk to me on Twitter or hit me up in the comments. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. Always trying to talk Bills football. Super excited about the idea that we might get to spend time at the stadium with one another this year in a full stadium. I really hope so. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for that. But as we head towards the draft, I suppose my overriding thoughts are just I'm still so excited. Like if I could sleep from the draft to September, I might do it. Just be in like a medically induced coma because I'm that excited for this team. It's just, Kansas City's obviously still going to be there, and woohoo, no rules. Like, whatever they do, like, everyone's like, well, they might be paying for it down the road. When's that day going to come? They just do whatever they want with the salary cap, but I don't want to go. I want to wrap this up because I'm approaching 20 minutes. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming this far into the video. I will talk to you soon after the draft. As always, above all else, go Bills.